Do people of African descent take DNA tests? It's a legitimate question. You know, as a YouTuber, this channel mainly focuses on ethnicity and DNA tests. And as I've been paying attention to my subscribers and what they're saying in the comment section, very few are of African descent, whether they're African American or whether they're somewhere in Europe, but they're of African descent. Not only can I tell from the thumbnail, but in the comments what's being described, and people are very quick to tell me their own ethnicity, as I'm very quick to say it in the videos. African is not something that's showing up. Now granted, I'm 1% African, my mom's 2% African, but you look at me and you're not going to know that. And it's not that I can legitimately identify with African culture or African American culture. I can't say that I can. I didn't know I was officially African until I saw it in the test. I always assumed I was part, but why is it though that it seems that people of African descent are not taking DNA tests? Well, the answer is pretty obvious to me. It's because they assume, now this is my assumption. Please, please, please tell me if I'm wrong. But my assumption is that if you are of African descent, you assume somewhere in your family tree there was what I'm going to dumb this down and neuter it, a forced relationship somewhere on there, that there's going to be European blood in with the African blood, and it's a shameful thing that no one feels comfortable talking about. I don't feel comfortable talking about it now, but at the same time, I've also made other videos talking about how at some point in history, in everyone's family tree, there was most likely a forced relationship between probably two different races. You know, we see this with Mexicans because I am a quarter Mexican. I have to assume the European blood I have on the Mexican side, was that completely consensual? That would take a lot of faith to believe so. You know, so that's something I think that we all have to come to terms with as we take these DNA tests, as we talk about them. But specifically, I've just noticed, it's an observation that people of African descent don't seem to take these tests at the same rate the rest of us do. And I'm basing that on the comments alone. I will say that, and this is pretty relevant to this video, that what are the two main factors that caused me to pick MyHeritage for my DNA test? Well, the first was a Jewish girl in Israel on Twitter. I was asking questions about which test would be the best. I wanted to find out if I was part Jewish, which turns out through my mom taking the test, we find out that my great-grandmother was Sephardic Jewish. But, so that worked. And it is good for telling you if you're Jewish. So she was one on Twitter. But then the next thing I did, she sent me a link to the website. I clicked on it, to MyHeritage. And they automatically had a commercial that showed, and it was a guy of African descent. I can't remember if he was African American or if he was British, but he was of African descent, mostly African descent. And he basically said this in a commercial that's on the MyHeritage website. And he was saying, you know, I wasn't really that inspired to take the test because I pretty much figured I was just going to be mostly African and maybe, you know, a little bit European. But he said, it actually, yeah, I am 3/4 African, but he said, but I'm 3% Finnish. Like, who would have thought? And so seeing that, I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. Someone of African descent that took the test. I don't know, that seemed like a cool story. And I ended up taking MyHeritage. And actually, it's my personal favorite test. Everyone's got their own reasons to having their own favorites. A lot of people I talk to actually say they like 23andMe better. But for me, my sister took that. And after comparing, I'm very pleased that MyHeritage is how I went. But anyway, this kind of reminds me of the video I made. It's one of my most popular on this channel about how people, especially in America, who are of mainly European descent, are hoping that they're Native American because they've always been told that their great-grandmother was. And then they find out the test doesn't show that at all. You know, it's this thing. We have these preconceived ideas of what happened up in our family tree. There's some things we want to believe that happened. We want to believe that there was diversity and the fact that there's Native American blood in us because there's such shame in the history of what happened there with Native Americans. And then with people of African descent, I imagine I'm just trying to understand this, me trying to be empathetic because I can't relate because I'm not predominantly African descent. But I have to assume that there's going to be some shame in thinking, yeah, but what's that European blood doing in me? How did it get there? What's the rest of the story there? So this is me just saying what I think about why this is, why I don't see more people of mainly African descent commenting and watching my videos. Because if you show up watching one of my videos, what it means is you're like me. You're obsessed with ethnicity. You're obsessed with understanding diversity in your own family tree. But it just seems that culturally, people of African descent are less likely to do so. So what I'm asking, if you are of African descent, predominantly African descent, please tell me your thoughts on this. I want to learn more. Am I completely wrong? Am I completely naive to think this way? I don't know. I want to know. I want to be open-minded, and I want to learn. I'm all about diversity, and my perspective on reality is just mine. It's very limited. So I'd be the first to say that I'm naive. I can't know better until someone teaches me better, someone with a different perspective. And that's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm asking for. Can you help me out? Thanks.